Welcome to History Uncovered, where the past comes alive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let's dive into history together. We begin in North America in the year 1750. It has been 150 years since settlers from Western Europe, often fleeing poverty, hunger, religious persecution, or political oppression, first arrived on the continent. Their migration cost the lives of millions of Native Americans who had inhabited these lands for thousands of years, mostly in tribal communities. On the eastern seaboard, Britain established colonies with a population of about 1.5 million. In the north, the economy relied mainly on fishing and trade. In the south, the climate was ideal for growing tobacco, rice, and cotton. Wealthy landowners, known as planters, seized vast areas and exploited them, buying enslaved people brought from Africa as part of the so-called triangular trade. Further west, the Appalachian Mountains formed a natural barrier. Beyond them lay a large French colony, sustained primarily through trade with the Miamis. Tensions between the French and British colonies were rising. When the 7 Years' War erupted in Europe, Britain, dominant in the conflict, took control of New France. Native American tribes in the region united, demanding the withdrawal of British forces and recognition of their own sovereign nations. To calm the unrest, the British government hastily created indigenous reservations between the Appalachians, the Mississippi River, and the Great Lakes. But this decision angered the colonists. They wanted to expand westward and claim new territories. Adding to the tension, the war had drained Britain's treasury. The Crown expected the colonies to help repay the debt through new taxes, which fueled widespread resentment. In Boston, protesting the new tax on tea, colonists disguised themselves as Native Americans, boarded British ships belonging to the East India Company, and dumped the cargo, tea, into the ocean. In the wake of this growing unrest, delegates from 12 colonies gathered in Philadelphia to form the First Continental Congress. They agreed to boycott British goods. A year later, the War of Independence began. Rebels, also called patriots, faced off against British forces and their loyalist allies. On July 4th, 1776, the Second Continental Congress declared the independence of the United States of America. France saw an opportunity to retaliate for its defeat in the 7 Years' War and joined forces with the Patriots. France had made a serious investment in its navy. Now it was strong enough to challenge Britain's royal fleet. France entered into an alliance with the Patriots. Soon after, Spain and the United Provinces of the Netherlands also joined the war against Great Britain. By 1783, the Patriots achieved victory, forcing Britain to officially recognize the independence of the United States. The new nation gained territory extending to the Mississippi River, while Spain seized control of Florida. This marked the first time a European colony had successfully gained independence. The United States adopted a constitution based on the strict separation of powers. The legislative branch, represented by Congress, was responsible for laws and the national budget. The judicial branch, led by the Supreme Court, ensured that the Constitution was upheld. The executive branch was headed by the President of the United States, acting as the nation's leader. At the same time, each of the 13 states retained its own sovereignty, complete with individual constitutions and governors. A decision was made to construct a new capital city on the banks of the Potomac River. In the West, any territory with a free population over 60,000 could apply for statehood, with equal rights to all other states. Pioneers began pushing westward, displacing Native American tribes beyond the Mississippi River. In 1800, France acquired Louisiana from Spain in exchange for the Kingdom of Tuscany. But defending this vast, remote, and little-known territory proved difficult. Fearing it might lose Louisiana in a war with Britain, France decided to sell the region to the United States. Congress then financed several expeditions to explore and reach the Pacific Ocean. Meanwhile, in Europe, France and Great Britain once again clashed. The United States attempted to remain neutral, but after disputes with Britain, entered the war. Their effort to invade Canada failed. British naval forces reached Washington, D.C. during a raid and set the city ablaze. As the war came to an end, the United States abandoned its ambitions in the north and turned its attention southward, where the Spanish Empire was declining. A military incursion into Florida, followed by diplomatic negotiations, resulted in the annexation of the territory. In the West, Oregon was shared with Britain. East of the Mississippi, 5 Native American tribes had begun to adapt to a settled agricultural lifestyle. Nevertheless, Congress decided to reclaim these lands and forced their relocation to reservations west of the Mississippi. Thousands perished during the journey. Absolutely. Here's your translated and refined English narration, shaped with realistic tone, correct grammar, and expressive flow ideal for cinematic voiceover. Thousands died of exhaustion during the forced relocation. Meanwhile, in Mexico, Texas, whose population now consisted mostly of American settlers, declared independence. Following a war, the Republic of Texas was established, and in 1845 it was annexed by the United States. However, the borders remained unclear, and the two nations found themselves at war. The United States emerged victorious and seized the opportunity to annex New Mexico and California. The discovery of gold mines there triggered a frenzy, the gold rush, drawing hundreds of thousands of prospectors from across the country. Because land routes proved hazardous, private investors funded the construction of a railroad across the Isthmus of Panama. California was admitted to the Union as a free state, with slavery outlawed. The southern states remained largely agricultural and depended heavily on slavery. The North, on the other hand, had become industrial and free. Both sides sought to expand their system of governance into the Western territories, and this ideological divide pushed them further apart. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln, openly opposed to slavery, was elected president. In response, the Southern states seceded one by one and formed the Confederate States of America. A civil war erupted between the Union in the North and the Confederacy in the South. The North imposed a naval blockade along the Atlantic coast, cutting off Southern access to European support and halting cotton exports. By 1865, the Union had claimed victory and implemented its policies nationwide. Slavery was abolished, and 3.5 million enslaved people were freed. However, African Americans soon became victims of segregation and racism, especially with the rise of the Ku Klux Klan, a group that advocated white supremacy. Some freed individuals migrated to the north, others moved to urban centers. Fearing Britain might take control of Alaska, the Russian Empire sold the territory to the United States. To accelerate westward expansion, the U.S. government financed the construction of transcontinental railroads. The invention of new machines and farming tools led to agricultural growth in the heartland. Massive wheat and cornfields, along with vast grazing lands, came at a devastating cost. The last 250,000 Native Americans were displaced and confined to reservations. On the other hand, the fertile soil allowed industry to thrive rapidly. Continental Europe began to view the United States as a new El Dorado. Fleeing poverty and religious persecution, many people from Southern and Eastern Europe arrived in search of a better life.